I'm on the YouTube one too, so I'm trying to see if it will. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, good. I just tried to like stream to both of them because eventually I'll even try to stream to TikTok when I build up on TikTok, which I will do. But okay, welcome in. So I wanted to talk about a topic that's a little more general because I'm getting back on schedule with this. Normally it's Sunday 12 to 3. If life finds a way to mess that up, we don't. But it's a time to do space management. So it started a while back, and that's how it got this name, Housekeep-a-thon, which is kind of funny. And then it's HCAT or Housecat, and so it evolved its name. But housekeeping um, is part of Death Shaft. We added a bombs to it, but Death Shaft is used in like broad occupational therapy slang to refer to activities of daily living ADLs and instrumental activities of daily living IADLs. So you'll hear those terms, and it's just an acronym to remember: dressing, eating. Let me get this right: dress, eat, uh, ambulate, moving around, toilet, hygiene. So that's the first level of stuff you need to be able to do or have help with, as in a human. And then the next layer up is shaft, shopping, housekeeping. Let me see. I haven't said this for a while. Accounting, food prep, and telephone or telecommunication, some sort of communication. Anyways, so housekeeping. So that's part of how that got started. But the main idea is that you should do space management regularly, and it's helpful to. Hey, you made it. It's helpful to do kind of body doubling around it. There's the option to get onto the call at some point if you'd like to. No pressure to do that. It includes like joining the Discord, and the Discord is its own special sort of place that I want to spend a little bit more time on, but it's broadly speaking like a way to organize yourself in a group towards an activity, and there's some options that we've found successful over time. But the communication part, like if it's just helpful to listen to this like a free-flowing podcast while working on your space, great. That's sort of the run of the mill like way that we operate this, and it's been going for a bunch of years now. Space management is challenging for a lot of people who are neurodivergent, so it's not like you have to be autistic. We will have conversations around autism a lot of the times, but it's also generalizable, I think, to people who are neurodivergent broadly, and also just people, because a lot of the issues that we're finding with space management are actually societal wide stuff. Like I think the one thing I'll harp on a little bit every now and then and come back to is I think that spaces or homes should be designed very differently and have a lot of different options and customization to make them suitable for people with different neurodivergent brains instead of never getting a break from a neurotypical standard that isn't even good for the neurotypical, by the way, or the non-autistic person. It's survivable, but it doesn't like benefit anybody in a very purposeful way. As we can all see, it's kind of a hodgepodge of beliefs that are slowly crumbling from underneath them. And I get to have a lot of conversations randomly now with people that would have been unlikely to land, but now most people are pretty conscious of the fact that like the generation of millennials and zoomers and whatever happens to alpha are not going to have the same standards of expecting money that is a livable wage. And people that get a livable wage often are criminals who are ripping off people. And this is not a fake thing. This is a real thing. And oh my God. So sometimes we'll talk about that because we have to. But I don't want to overdo it. So I had an interesting conversation with a friend and music scene person out here that's helping to build spaces for musicians to perform in, and is generally trying to be a positive human being and has to put in quite a bit of effort to do that. But they were saying that they are trying to look at current events and say, like, how is this still for me? Like, what's in this that I can make a positive out of? Like, and the way, like, the way they said it, it sounded like if it was a delivery from the mail, right? Like, which of these is yours, like, for you, and then you can do something with it. It's the phrasing of it. I think they also had to like pause and like defend the phrasing of it because it's not great where we're at all. So you don't want to go into delulu about it. But what I find interesting is like, which is you go outside, you're disabled at this activity and that activity and also this activity and also that activity, and then that's unsustainable, and it's no good to try to constantly communicate to people like, well, but I really have a disability, when we have more people primed than we should at this point to think that winners and losers. Yeah. They're worried about that for everyone. So I have a theory of human motivation that goes like this. There's, for all intents and purposes, a division between doing as arriving and doing as building. So you can think of it as humans made a bunch of races, like relay races, whatever, with arbitrary finish lines and little prizes and trophies, which is how money works, and titles. Now, not to say that you can't have like legitimate forms of learning that you get credentials at the end. That, yes, but humans are really into this do the thing, win the points, score, beat the person to the finish line. There's way too much of that to the point of absurdity, and religions also mythologize it. And our religions are cultish, and they have cult identities that people adopt in the religion, so they become less able to respond to their human needs or other people's human needs. I would say they're dissociated. And while people run to these finish lines, they get more and more dissociated because you're hitting people, you're knocking them out of the way, you're getting hit, but you're supposed to be having a great grand old time getting to the objective, yes? But none of this makes any sense, and it encourages people to be liars in order to get to the finish line, because that's the high. Okay. Meanwhile, so let's say we'll put that as one way to receive motivation. There are people that can't do that because their global configurational awareness is not developed at all. If there's something in that borked about it, I think it's in the grid cells in the brain. I think autism does that. I think there's other things that would do that. But so neurodivergent people are particularly not awesome at this. And I have sympathy for that because I know how it feels internally, and it sucks. And it doesn't create opportunities for us to design local solutions, let alone global solutions for people who have this disability. And I must remind you that autism in particular is distributed very evenly across the entire global population. So we are everywhere, and that means that these systems, the worse they are, that is also hurting autistic people directly, specifically scapegoating, gaslighting, injuring, killing. I don't like that. I don't like that to happen to anybody, but I'm just going to note that this is a problem across the whole species, that sometimes we'll talk about that level of it. But the other way of doing is building. So let's put that relay race thing on a beach. The other way of doing is to sit and just want to build a sandcastle to understand how to build the sandcastle. Problem with this is the doing as arriving people will kick over the sandcastle, right? They see us as in the way, we see them as in the way, right? So there's a conflict that comes out of that. And there's people that are just more naturally, or I guess culturally, or I think successfully connected to their doing as building motivation. I get along with them better, and I have more hope for that person to understand the global problem. Now, that's a very, very short summary of something that gets infinitely more complex, but it relates to a lot of our issues. So doing is two things. So when people say they want to do something, they sometimes mean they want to arrive somewhere, and sometimes they mean they want to build something. I think for the well-being of everyone, we should have more doing as in building, as opposed to doing as in arriving. We'd have too much of the doing as in arriving, and I think people become addicted to it, like a psychological problem level of this is what's going on. So I think what's happening, I think our governments, I think all of it, I don't think it's economic. I mean, I think it creates economic problems, but I think it's a psychosocial disorder. I think we have psychosocial disorders running rampant. And us as autistic individuals who have a psychosocial disability, that sucks. That's no good. I can't be having a disability at something that everybody's getting disordered at. That's really bad. Like so yeah, so that's just, oh boy. Anyways, so diorama today. So let's make environments at home that we can do good building in, despite the fact that our society doesn't get it and doesn't understand why this is so important. It doesn't have to. Like we need to say, okay, as long as nobody can run through this physical space to do one of these races, which in a sense, in a I guess more abstract sense, they kind of are, but we need to make a little sanctuary in the place that we live, and we need to have people around us that understand that we're doing that and how important it is for us to do that, no matter how hard it is, no matter how many barriers there are in the place that we live. We have to. In my opinion, this is a non-negotiable demand, accommodation, period, done. If the world is going to keep acting like this, if human population as a whole is going to keep doing what it's doing, then this is what we get to spend our time doing. Sorry, done. No more questioning of that. So this is what this time is for. This time is for building your space around you. And if that's hard to do at first, it's for building up the chutzpah to like demand that is what you get to do with your time. That might take a little while. It's taken me a little while. Even though I've made progress, it's really not where I want it to be. And that means that we demand over and over and over again, at least for 3 hours on a Sunday, that this is what we get to do.
Can I add something to that, Jane?
Yes, please. Okay. Please.
Right. So I had a realization the other day that I figured out why initially in my workroom, when I had my art supplies in here, I felt like I couldn't, I basically felt that I couldn't do any of the art in this, in the room that I would like to do the art in. And it's my own space, nobody could see in it, right? I was really struggling with that, and initially I thought maybe it's because I didn't have the environment in control. It had to be, tidy enough. It had to have these things here or there, and it led me to a place, to a point where I tried to externalize it by bringing all of my stuff to like a little garage that a friend of mine has, right, and try to make that into a studio. But I didn't actually feel like doing anything over there, and then I only realized this day or the other day that the reason why I didn't feel like doing it, why I didn't feel like a safe sanctuary was that unconsciously I was dealing with shame around the very activity that I was trying to engage in, right?
Yes.
So sort of like the limitations in the outside world get internalized. They can get internalized to a point where you are sort of self-censoring yourself if you don't realize what's happening. And then that kind of makes you just not feel safe to do that. You still carry those internalized voices and thoughts and stuff. But yeah.
Okay, so the shame
So
thing
it was cool to find that out.
The shame thing is so. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I'm still unpacking my shame around it too. And like when I first started doing these streams, I sometimes had the camera on when my space was much crazier looking, and dealing with like, oh, I don't care if people see that I struggle with this. It's good that people see that I've had to deal with this, and this is where I'm starting from, and any quote unquote progress I make is me saying there was no reason for me to ever be ashamed about this. I have a disability. So even for us to have windows of ability, I think there's shame around that, where it's like, oh, well, how come you can do this but not this other stuff? And it's like, well, because my society has a completely ridiculous model of what my disability acts like, or any of our disabilities act like, or even what people act like what people need and what people don't need. It's very frustrating. So I think that our shame a lot of times is is displacement of the responsibility of society running fairly and sensibly. We have we have religions that believe abject nonsense dictating what entire countries are doing. So for us to feel ashamed that we want to do art and build the things we want to do and get better at the skills that we want to get better at is really like us saying, hey, how come we can't already do that? And society saying, well, we're really smart and good and we're not disabled. So fuck you. Even though if you
Mm.
drill down, a lot of it is nonsense religions that if you unpick the beliefs, they're crazy. They're crazy. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
here's one way of seeing it to add to your example with the sandcastle, right? With the doing is arriving versus doing is building. Another thing that I've observed, another way to look at it is one guy in charge, sometime in the past, usually, right? And it's usually a guy, said that this is the biggest, best thing that all of you guys should do, right? And he didn't tell everybody else that the reason why he says that is that it benefits him, right? So then he obviously convinces and fools a bunch of people to mobilize to his cause, right? And then he enforces that as a sort of a race that everybody has to run. And I think in order to make sure that people don't catch in on the scam, they often push up the sort of like they change the goals here and there, obfuscate it, make people confused, right? But then still kind of push them, pressure them to, like, to run for it so that they don't have any time to think about meaning in
Mhm.
life
Mhm.
or other ways of doing things so that they endlessly kind of push that stuff. But of course, the people who made that system or who continue to sort of like, change these systems to their benefit, they're not the ones running the race. They're sitting comfortably,
Yes.
maybe from a beach hut looking down as everybody's like running or whatever. And
Exactly.
then when they see somebody not playing the race, and they're building a sandcastle, that's a big threat because then other people might see the person building the sandcastle, and that's a threat to their operation. And then so then what? But then they might not do it directly. You see, they might subtly get the people who are running the race to police themselves and to pressure that person into joining in, through like fears or promises that they fabricate or whatever, right?
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that's the trick with all of this, yeah.
Yeah, and okay, I wanted to say something. So Jamie has a harder time, I think, with this in particular because Jamie has more
Right, sure.
rumination. So, but Jamie was saying because the system we live in, we require money. So each person that judges our becoming us becomes another future avenue of financial gain that we lose access to due to their judgment. So we are affected, like whether we like it or not. No, but us worrying about that person is disabling us further. It doesn't matter. They're going to judge us whether we do this, that, or the other because we'd have a disability. So it doesn't matter. They're going to judge us the same way that the rest of the insane society judges us. They are an agent of
Also,
insanity.
they don't care about you. They care about meeting their needs.
Right,
That's
exactly,
first and
exactly.
foremost.
And if someone's judging us, right, they're saying like, well, I'm not disabled like you. I'm like, cool. You go do that. You go be in a system that's going to make, I think, people dissociate more and more and more and more. So one of the things I would argue for people on the spectrum in particular is we also have to stop getting dissociated. We have to be in our bodies as much as possible, including when our bodies are going through something difficult, aging as well. So regardless of what somebody's going to do to judge us, okay, cool, we're not going to, you wouldn't want money from that person because they're going to get more and more dissociated from reality, and that person will hurt you. What is the point of us getting money from people that will hurt us? What,
And
like
keep in
genuinely?
mind that, yeah, they want that as well. So the thing is that the more distracted they make you, the
Yes,
less you can focus on what matters to you. So then you can see what sort of subtle effects that somebody might be pulling on you and using you to their advantage.
exactly.
This
Exactly.
happens with like social media and technology nowadays. It's like the biggest stage for it because of, things like multi-screening, right? The way the
Mhm.
social media and algorithms are created are very much to get people to be better at using social media, but then to fracture their focus and attention so that they
Mhm.
can kind of start to critically think and question, the systems that they engage with. But yeah.
Right. Right, because we can spend all of our time. This is something that I've realized. Okay, so I actually this will be a good thing to share because it will help. So people who treat you that way, whether they have money in society or not, and often they don't now because they're just people stuck online who maybe even have bots or something. For all you know, they're in Russia trying to corrupt the West. You don't freaking know who this person is. It's just like, a lot of it's that. So I was on Roblox, right? And I like to pop around in this debate one to see how people are debating that are young people, and also because there's trolls that go in there, and I like to report them because I've realized really early on that I can get in the top reporting percentage, and I'm helping the kids know that they can report. Like I'll tell them, hey, if this is really screwed up, this person can get an IP ban and can get put on the list because people take your safety seriously, so report every time. So I said that, and that enraged this weird troll. Like they tried to do everything they could. They were insulting my avatar that looks bomb as hell because I have like put actual money into like making this avatar look cool. So I have a very cool outfit on my avatar, and I know how to stack outfits because I know how to do fashion. So, yup. So my avatar looks cool, and then they start throwing racial slurs at what they think my avatar looks like. So I'm like, huh. And now I'm like, oh, everything is like that. Everybody who's ever told me I'm not good enough based on, some internet person running through, or anybody who ever tells me that, is the same. It suddenly became crystal clear. There was no difference between that and any judgments that have ever been leveled against me. Nothing. Nothing. It was never about me. It was never personal. That couldn't have been personal and was ridiculous. So it's what's important is that we actually block that out and see that like it's never going to change. Those sorts of individuals will always exist, and right now their voices are artificially elevated, and their position in society can be artificially elevated because we have a society that absolutely is currently rewarding sociopathy. Yup, that is happening. However, when I say that, all but the very like head in the sand, maybe some people that are from such an detached generation that they don't see it, but all but that would be like, yeah, you're right. Like who is disagreeing with that? Genuinely. Like ain't nobody, right? So you have, I think, a chance to point that out without having to lose too much steam. Like, we need our energy for us. I need my energy for me. And the people that are going to run through are the same as that Roblox weirdo who was saying racial slurs to frighten children. Who was, that's what they
So I
were
think
doing.
at the core of this, I'm not reading the chat on Twitch, but I think it's the little person there who like wrote that, right? It's you got to learn to assert your boundaries. That's the crux of this, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Because
love it.
these people, if you try to argue with them or you try to convince them, they'll. What happens basically is that they get mad, and in their head they're like, "How dare you infringe my rights to bully people?" Right?
Hmm.
Because they're
Hmm.
immature and entitled, and they lack awareness
The
and
person,
hard boundaries from their own parents.
yes,
I
and
see.
the person, I don't know, I was saying they probably were old. They probably are, by the way. They probably are old creeps, to be honest. But or they learned it from old
Hmm.
creeps if they're
But
young.
still mature.
But yeah, but yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. But I was like, this person is going in here to try to normalize kids accepting their abuse, right? No matter if this person's a kid themselves or whatever, right? So once I knew that, and I knew, okay, if I tell the kids, this person can get real consequences, right? If you report him, that set this person off. So like, and I was like, huh, That's actually fascinating. So you can talk past the people judging you to everyone else who's scared of them. You can talk past them to everyone who's like, I don't feel good about this, but I don't know what I can do. I guess I just have to live by their rules. No, you don't. No, you don't. Even right now, we're living with a more abuse online than we will be able to do and be able to justify in the future. This is not okay. We just haven't caught up to the technology with law, and law is having a hard time catching up to technology because law is trying to regress into religious notions as a coping mechanism for a disruptive technology that we are now dealing with and all the complexities therein. But all it takes is saying, this is messed up. There's more of us who are not messed up, but we're afraid. We don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be that's this isn't easy to change, because it feels like you're being realistic knowing that they're out there and doing this, that, and the other, whatever. But now we've adopted this person's goal, which is to do nothing. They can't do anything. They're genuinely jealous of your capacity to do something. They can literally, all they can do is try to make children feel uncomfortable and abused, and try to groom children, and just know every space that you're in, because it's unregulated, children may be there. So that means every person that acts like this is aware of that, every single one of them. So don't worry about you, worry about kids. Okay, if you can't worry about yourself right now because it feels like too much, worry about children. Okay, that these people would do this and want to do this and want to groom children to accept this level of abuse. So say no for them. Say no for the kids. Don't worry about you then, if that makes it easier, right? So this is why you make your diorama. This is why we do this. It's bigger than just them picking on you now, because we're not kids anymore. So that means there are kids that are getting picked on. And I would have very much liked, and I'm sure there were adults that stood up for me, right, and said, like, no, you're not going to make this little girl normalize abusive people treat, so that I didn't end up in an abusive relationship as an adult, which I'm not in now. So that, think of it that way, that these people do not, they do not aim high. They aim for everyone, including little kids. And then you can have
Oh,
zero
it's
tolerance.
oh,
Go ahead.
hello. It's Bunny.
Hi,
Just got here. Yeah,
welcome.
Hey, Bonnie.
from the little sister. Yeah. And since I just got here, is if you could catch me up on the conversation at all, just like so I just know where we are,
Yes,
that would be great. But you don't have to.
I'm responding to the fact that we need to build our own dioramas and spaces at home. And so, Jamie, it doesn't
Ooh.
matter. It doesn't matter if you're an adult who's not trying to talk to children. You probably are. You have been. You have talked to children on my stream, because children have come through my stream, because it just happens. So that's how we carry ourselves as adults. It doesn't matter. You don't control the environment like that. And people that are abusive absolutely know that there are children in the environment. I refuse to believe they're ignorant of that. So, because you got to know the type. So it doesn't matter. It genuinely, and everybody who thinks they're on an adult level playing field and also not acting like adults, bullying people and judging them like that, that's not an adult thing to do.
Oh, we should be acting as if there are children around in every space we're in anyway, because none of us have been raised in a perfect environment, and we all need a Mr. Rogers around at all times anyway. So we should all be trying to channel our inner version of Mr. Rogers at all times
Yes.
in all conversations
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, Jamie, like, you got to get out of whatever's happening right now. It's super negative. We need to make sure that this doesn't become a pattern for you. So when you're an adult now, so you can be nice to children and helpful to children, that is your responsibility as an adult. Even us disabled adults, that is our responsibility as an adult. If somebody hasn't phrased it that way, that's because that's an abusive person. As adults, that's just what we do. That's just what we do. So I don't know why you went to that, But if you're saying that like being children means that you're a predator, children being around means you're a predator, that makes no sense. That doesn't make any sense. That's just like when I was a kid, I was online playing text-based D&D games with adults who didn't know I was even there, right? Because I didn't want to disturb them or bother
A lot
them or
of
make them
people
feel weird.
online, a lot of kids lie about their age.
100%.
That's common. You'll never know exactly. Yeah.
100%. So Jamie, there's no reason why that means that because children are around that somebody's going to accuse you of being a predator. You've internalized this idea that everyone's going to attack you somehow. No, they're not. You just have to say no, that like you just don't have to take on any of that. I don't know. I think you've been in spaces where people reinforce that, but there's literally nobody here thinking that. That's weird. That's a weird thought.
Yeah, none of us is saying that. No.
I think if you've been in spaces where people have been saying that and accusing of you, then maybe they were predators. Because that's a weird thought to have. Yeah, there. You're good. You're good. You're good. Okay. So that being said, so this is how we got to think about it. So if you have negative bullshit around you, know that those people are also throwing that negative bullshit to try to make the next generation of kids think that that's fine. And so you don't have to take it anymore. We don't have to take it. I'm having that realization at work too, which is now I'm having like Gen Z people that are in their very early 20s, and they're like, this doesn't feel healthy or right. This feels like bullshit. This aspect of normal working life. I'm like, you know what? It is bullshit. You're right. Yep. We don't have to do it this way. It's not working. It's not leading to opportunities for people. It's making it more likely that people that are sociopathic lie and abuse other people and pretend to be these brilliant leaders of industry when they're not. So we can say all of that and at the same time take care of our living space to make it meet our needs for accommodation. And that's what I want to emphasize, is that the online environment has a lot of issues and they're very stressful. So how do we view that environment, like change our lens of it to dismiss this pressure that we feel as autistic people and as neurodivergent people to tell them to stop, because they're not going to stop. However, so this is why I like Mr. Rogers. Attitudes are caught, not taught. We're not going to be able to tell them to stop. That sucks, but if we do something that we turn out healthy on the other end of it, people will see that. Not just them, but the people that are cowed into or intimidated into saying nothing since they were children, right? That's who we're developing ourselves for. That's why we're developing ourselves, so people can see it. But yes, so wanted to add all that to situate why we're going to switch and pivot to, we want our spaces to be shame-free environments that we develop our abilities to contribute in the things we really believe in. And if anybody acts like, oh, that's stupid, have they ever tried? No. They're doing as a arriving person, probably getting some sort of personal issue that they're projecting onto you in a psychosocial manner. So we need to have environments that welcome healthy psychosocial dynamics and immediately call out this bullshit. And if it's hard to call out when it feels directed as from an adult as an adult, then remember that there's children here all the time, and they're also trying to make children feel afraid, even if they don't know that's what they're doing, even if they've just internalized it and don't understand it. They caught that attitude somewhere else, and I'm going to call it out, and then we can hopefully be more effective in doing the extreme amount of work that we have to do to change our environments to make them a functional diorama that will support us doing is building. Yeah, reality testing.
It's also worth remembering that a lot of people, like these people who bully, and go for folks online as well as in the real world, they didn't grow up knowing the value or being taught the value of childhood, or sort of the sanctity of being a human being. So, because that's how their parents raised them and how their parents themselves were raised. And so these are the unconscious reasons that move them to act the way they do.
Right. And part of the, world cult that we're all in is this formalization of the separation between childhood and adulthood that includes things that it shouldn't, right? Like as you grow into an adult, you are gaining capacities to understand reality, but we make it into this huge ritual sacrifice of your love of things and playing and all these other things that are stripped out of being an adult human. And so like it all of that goes into this cult we're fighting and want to make places that don't follow those trends or whatever.
You know what's funny? Something they often say to kids, oh, the kids are they're really perceptive. People are really perceptive when they're young, right? It's funny that it's this specific trait, perception, which seems to be dulled, in school and different environments. And, no wonder why, like some people who are in power want to do that because they don't want you to see what they're doing.
Jane, you said we were making dioramas. How do
Yeah.
you mean that word in this
Yes.
context?
So you're going to make a little world that has the parts of the outside world that you want to play with and to build with, and then you don't have the other things. So like a diorama has exclusion as a property of it, right? So we need to make our own version of that is like the world as we would like it to treat us, and that's what it is. Like it's like I was using diorama because I'm like, well, it's not a snow globe, it's not that isolated, but I wanted to signify
How about
that.
another, go on.
Oh no, you if you have a better one, go for it.
I don't know if it's better. I did have another analogy that I found this like today, which makes sense. A dry dock or a dock or a harbor
Mm-hmm.
that your ship can dock and feel safe, can be maintained before it sails out. And if it's stormy out, it can always sail back, right? If it's unsafe to go out there.
Oh, so then, um,
I guess yeah, because it can be like a little. I've never played Sea of Thieves, but I remember like in a game like that, I guess you can have a little island, with
Mm-hmm.
you've got your little treasure chest
Yeah, I like it. I've been using kind of like this nautical thing.
where you put and stuff. Yeah.
I like it because I was using the nautical thing to talk about what you calls it ghost ships. So ghost ships are people that are coming by, I guess, your little island, and then they're like, hey, you have to save me, but they're just like haunted, and they really don't want to be rescued. They just want to pull people into their weird like ghost curse, but they're like distracting you from doing what you were doing and using abuse tactics to say that like there's all these
Yeah,
reasons.
I think a good analogy for that would be like if it's it'll be a stormy day out, out from the beach, and then you see obviously a ship kind of wrestling around some rocks or whatever, and so you might be afraid that you need to go and save those people.
Hmm.
But you have to trust your gut feeling, I feel, because if you're getting close and you're noticing that you're getting closer and closer to like, jagged rocks or something,
Hmm.
you have to weigh the risk that you want to take because it could not even be a real ship at all. It could be an illusion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's and I wanted to comment too because like I do try to be helpful with the specifics, but like Jamie tries to memorize rules in one space and then repeat it
mhm.
to be socially accepted. But what I'm trying to impress, I've talked about this before, but I'm convinced that what's actually happening is when the rules change, that's the game. The game is to know how much you can change the rules. There's like a limit testing and a leveling, so you're all having similar behavior, and the rules are just to establish similar behavior. And the point, it doesn't matter what that behavior is. Like you just want it to be similar, and that's the game, is to become similar enough that you're a group.
I guess that's
And
also for
yeah,
the purpose of fairness, right?
right.
As well. Or
Yeah.
that's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it gets really sophisticated. It's not all negative. It's a sophisticated way to relate to each other that people with certain neurodevelopmental disabilities just can't even do. And I think sometimes test basin or mesocosm, that's cute too. But yeah, like a harbor is nice too as well. But we need a sanctuary place. Like I was thinking of it as like my own little
Oh,
island.
okay.
So I'm happy with that.
Mhm.
I'll change it. I'll put how to, I'll say build your sanctuary island. I'll say it that way for now. There's other ways you can think of it too. But yeah, okay. So speaking of all that, I think it's interesting that like people on the autism spectrum, we can look like we're following the same rules if we have certain behaviors of like how we talk, but I think those behaviors are probably just emergent of our brains and not an intentional social thing, or that is to say we do have like mirror neurons and mimic each other, but we're missing a lot of what people are doing. Like it doesn't register as what it actually is for somebody who doesn't have this disability. So we just like at some point have to like give people the benefit of the doubt that this social ability is fun and good for them, and even when sometimes I think it goes off the rails. Oh, a cove. Ooh, a cove is nice.
Okay.
I like that.
Well, because diorama puts me in mind of immediately of like a physical little thing you're setting up, and so that that wasn't
Perfect.
tracking for me right away.
This works.
I think there's like a dimension of it works both
The Coven's Cove is a haven. I like this internet needs to reload stream. Okay.
Right, a lot of things are missing. As Jess was saying, a lot of things I'm missing. It's just like fuck it, cats, and I have 5 cats that don't care that I'm socially awkward and miss a lot of what appears to be very arbitrary social cues. And they are I think it's okay to say that like a lot of it is pretty damn arbitrary because that's not it because it's not the point. However, people could organize themselves around social cues that we understand better, but they'll still be doing that social ability that is disrupted and doesn't develop in autistic people, and like that's fine. That part's fine. What's not so great, I think, and what kind of messes with the whole thing and being cool is when they're doing that skill around crazy cult shit. Then it feels really, really unjust and really uncool. So, anyways, so yay, you're out of Adland. Woohoo. I wish I knew how to turn that off. I think I can, but I'll need to reset that. Anyways, ads are done. Okay. Coven's Cove is, that's so good. All right, so building the Haven thing is what I want to start focusing on, and then the idea that there's like shame around it, and that, how do, because it distracts me when I have to think about like, oh, people will think this, that, or whatever about me for doing this, that, or whatever. Like, I don't like anticipating the negative feedback, but it was really helpful to realize that it's probably all the same, and it's not any different than that weird person on Roblox. Even if it's somebody who's more respectable, I don't think it's any different. And I think everybody that's acting like, because most of the thing that I'm gonna have to worry about is online, right? All of us. Most of it's online, which is weird, but it's true. So then I go back to, well, then there's kids here. So they're actually modeling that behavior to kids, and I think that's screwed up. So that gives me a little more, I guess, sticking to my guns on it.
Had a thought. These people, maybe they're also, I mean, they are, right? They're insecure of childhood and children, of the idea of like innocence and goodness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they go out of their way to despoil that, right? Because like I think about like my experiences with trolls when I was younger, or just the notion in general, right? It's like it's all about saying something that's very edgy, showing something very scandalous or whatever, and with the relishment that comes from that. And it's almost from a place of, it's almost lashing out a resentment,
Yes.
because perhaps that person experienced something
They
traumatic
must
like
have.
that, and some
They
people,
must have. Yeah.
yeah,
They must. Otherwise, why would they act like that? You know what I mean? I do think that's what it is. I think they're trying
yeah.
to, yes, like steal people's childhood the way that theirs was stolen. Or the way that they want to break people the
This,
way
I
that
remember
they feel
something like,
they're broken. Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry for interrupting, Jane. I think my internet cut out there, so
No
sorry if I
worries.
spoke over you.
No worries. I was just saying that I think that, like, in general, on some level, these are people that want power because they feel broken in some way, that they want to make other people broken. But I don't think
Or I
that's
think it's
how
also, it's
people work.
control. They feel powerless. They
Yeah.
feel powerless, and it's almost like when people feel powerless, what they'll, because I was doing kind of in a sense the same thing, right? When one feels insecure, it's because of powerlessness is a feeling of a loss of control. So what one tends to do in order to sort of self-soothe is they'll try to control something smaller than themselves, right? Like, for example, when I couldn't kind of move in to do art in my space, I thought, well, the way that I self-soothe is, I would try to clean the space. I try to make it right because that's something within my control, something smaller. So in some warped way, I feel like those people maybe were doing the same where, oh, I lost my train of thought almost, but I think I was getting onto something with this. They were trying to control sort of something for the system, for what they're doing. Oh, because children are like smaller than them. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So they want to feel powerful over the only people they can, but that actually goes to say just how powerless these people feel compared to the rest of society and their
Right.
peers.
Yep. And this is also, actually, this is a good time to mention this. If we do ever get any trolls here, I was working this out with ChatGPT. We should have our own language to talk about it. So I think saying something like, "Oh, it's a ghost ship, everyone. You know what to do." Something simple. So then the person will feel out of the loop, and that will make them feel out of control before we block and ban them. So always block and ban them immediately. I will give our little code word so they lose some power on the way out. And then we remember that, like, they're all the same. And that's the important thing. Like, we can say that in the chat too, is like they're all the same, because that's true. And that's very important, so we don't get hung up on it. And then I don't know why we have so many people like that. I don't know how you fix that, but we can say, like, this person is actually not unique. Any critiques that come from that place are not unique. They're not worth worrying about because they're identical. There's not something special that's happening. So if somebody critiques you or me or whatever, I can't imagine a psychologist critiquing any of us. And even insofar as they did, it would probably be to just regulate us, to get us down regulated so that we can be more functional. That's it. So we don't have to think it's anything more than the crazy person on Roblox. They're the same. And even if it's like people in serious leadership positions that they're completely unfit for, that's what I'm saying is like we on some level have to not pay attention to that, which I get is difficult because it feels like we're not being informed citizens. But this is abuse. This is abuse. We should not be spending this much time worrying about abusers' behavior.
It's what you said earlier, Jane, though, as well. It's similar to like in Roblox. It's about organizing together to call those people out at the very least, right? And at least, with Roblox, there's you have the nice fact that there's a clear-cut way where people can join together to ban somebody, for example, right? They can be kicked.
Yep.
And that is at least something that's much more possible than things out in the real world. But then even then, in the real world, it's important also for the same reason, because there are mechanisms, or when there aren't, we can build them. Put people into account. And I think if people don't keep that in mind, then it's difficult to change things. Yeah.
Yes, and we don't really have a good way to appreciate right now how unwell a lot of people are. So I heard something earlier today that I was engaged with. Sam Harris is an odd duck. I think it's funny that he like bankrolled his PhD off of his mom being the producer of Golden Girls, but there you go. Anyways, but he's less of a shithead than some other shitheads. But he was saying that he's pretty sure that, where he's quite convinced that Elon Musk is deeply addicted to Twitter, and is on ketamine.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk is addicted to Twitter and on ketamine, and that's his main issue. And he has a family problem with his trans daughter. So that's why Elon Musk is a basket case. The man is crazy. And we should be able to say that. Like, not only are these people addicted to these addicting platforms, and like Sam Harris said that he got off Twitter 2 years ago, I assume, when we all were like, no, I'm not going to use this crazy platform. And he was saying that he had a problematic use of it, and he wasn't as bad as some people. Meanwhile, he knows people and knows this Elon character personally in some way. So he was able to say, this man is on ketamine, you guys. So this is so incredibly important for us to understand. And this is what Bandy Lee says, and why I think she's a national treasure. Fascism, so if you say right-wing extremists, whatever, all that stuff, is a psychosocial disorder. It's not an economic thing or even an ideological thing. It's a mental health thing. Or not even, it's a health thing. We have a public health emergency. So this is important for us to notice. If somebody has like personality disorders that are like really abusive, they don't want therapy. They are really hard to treat because they won't admit they need treatment. So why would these people say that they are? You know what I mean? They're not going to be like, oh yeah, actually I do have that mental pathology. No, they're not going to say it. Meanwhile, the behavior, you got to know it. Like, and it's okay, because you got to also think like, the leadership that we've had as a species is pretty freaking batshit insane. And as it turns out, we're not past that very much at all. Probably for a variety of reasons. But if you can get your head around that money doesn't make somebody not crazy, a total kookaloo on drugs. In fact, it appears to make them more likely to be kookaloos on drugs. And we could just say it. We could just be like, oh, they're kooks on fucking drugs, man. Like, yay. Done. Pattern over. Don't have to worry about that one anymore. And everyone who can't see that they're kooks on drugs, okay, is going to not see it for a while. And that's okay. because it sucks to have like our leadership positions occupied by kooks on drugs, but we do. So what do we do from there? Okay, now we can take care of ourselves. Now you can dismiss it. That it's not what they're saying it is. You don't have to check again and 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 again. It's kooks on drugs who believe in culty religions losing their shit on new technologies.
Yeah, I think what's clear to see is that just the very desire to like attain wealth in like the billions should be pathological. You know, it should be seen
Yeah.
as pathological. That's like very clear.
Yep.
So I think the way to kind of go against that is, you know, they buy these they make these monopolies to try to monopolize all of your time and all of your needs. Though it might be difficult, the more you can distance yourself and separate yourself from the stuff that makes them wealthy, I think that's the way that you take back power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make it this epic battle between good and evil and stuff like that. It could just be they're out of their minds, not healthy individuals, and the standard is being held artificially lower so that these people can believe they're not insane. Because they have money, and then they give money to be like, now treat me like I'm not crazy. No, I'm not getting paid to. Are you getting paid to treat them like they're not crazy? I'm not getting paid to treat them like they're not crazy. I'm losing money treating them like they're not crazy. This thing that I'm supposed to give a shit about that I barely do, that they think is the most important thing in life and is going to get them to live immortally on Mars. They think they're going to be immortal on Mars. They're insane. So if you're not getting paid directly to fluff up their ego, then why are you working for free? Because that's what their closest inner ring gets paid to do.
Yeah, I think they don't realize just how delusional and crazy they are. That I think that they would essentially dry up the earth of all its resources, potentially kill millions of people if it came to it, and they still wouldn't understand. They wouldn't, well, first they wouldn't even recognize the extent of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the behavior of, say, somebody who's in an extreme addiction cycle.
Yep.
And yeah, it's pure on delusion. You can't reason with that, so you have to separate yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually really like my point there. Like they pay people a lot of money to go along with them and make them live in their private Disneyland of the mind. We're not getting paid anything. So why are we doing that job? Makes no sense. No, you can thoroughly dismiss this as it sucks that humans put crazy people in charge, but we're like right now we're too embarrassed and too groomed to say anything about it, so we can just say it and move on, and we need to become healthy. And the only way we can do that is by taking care of what actually exists, which is our real body, right? And our real physical environment. That's it. That's it. And our real body is psychosocial in nature, even with autism. We look at how much we're helping each other. That's what we should be doing. That's what we are doing, but we don't get to pay attention to it. So this is
Right.
this is the change right
And
here.
this is a wonderful gust of wind for us to reorient to what you just said, to doing things for us instead of talking about these people.
Mm-hmm.
So hoist the sails.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. And that gets back to.
It's actually pretty good proverbial sailing today. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited. And then there's things I talked about this the other week called treasure map islands. Treasure mapped islands are cursed also. Treasure map island is like most social media that allows for like searching and algorithms. And what happens is there are some real treasures there, and there's treasure maps that will help you to find them. But usually what you find is more treasure maps. So it's an island that is cursed
Or mimics.
Yeah, well, the treasure map might just lead to a treasure map. That's the thing, right? So there may never ever be a treasure at the end of the treasure map, but it does take you to another goose chase towards another treasure, and you can
Oh
spend
yeah, yeah.
all day there.
It'll be a letter, and somebody will be like, yeah, they'll be like, oh, go to this place. I swear it's this place. I saw these things. Yeah.
Also,
Well,
so
this is what like news articles have become, right? They're cursed treasure maps, so that if you look at the treasure map, a tiny bit of a gold nugget gets created in some witch's cave, right? And so they put the most attention grabbing titles on these scrolls, and then there's nothing inside them except possibly more treasure maps, and you know,
mhm.
like you were saying, because they're getting paid for you looking at it.
Yeah.
And they're getting paid to make you look at other ones.
Also, Jamie was expressing concern
You
that
know, there's
autistics. Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm going to Google something.
Okay, Jamie was expressing concern that autistics
I
could
was
create
just, or go
toxic
ahead.
hierarchy. No, we can't. We can't see it. If my understanding of what autism is correct, then no, we can't. We can be perceived as doing that, but no, we can't, because hierarchies demand global configurational reasoning, and we don't have it. So it doesn't matter. Like, we just fucking can't. That's like being like, I'm
Well, here's
scared
a
that somebody that's congenitally blind might paint a picture of Hitler. Probably not. Like,
well, that's a good general question for Jamie there. Is Jamie, do you believe that some people are inherently superior or inferior to others? I don't
I
believe
mean,
they are.
so even putting the word superior in that sentence makes it into a hierarchy sentence. And I'm just like, I can't parse that accurately because there's no specific definition. And I know there isn't, right? Like that question is automatically going to mean different things to everyone who hears it.
yeah.
Well, I suppose I tried to put it in a way that is commonly
Yeah.
understood in terms of a hierarchical framework, because that's what a hierarchy is. It's about a pyramid, right?
Right.
Sure. I mean, I wasn't a critique of the question. I was just
Yeah, sorry, my apologies.
telling you my thoughts.
Yeah.
FYI.
Anyways, so I don't know. Like, I think there's certain stuff you don't have to worry about when you're autistic, even if people accuse you of it. Because if people accuse autistics of a bunch of shit that we're disabled at doing, it's not about us. It's never been about us. We need to make shit about us. We need to make shit about like, we autistic people. We have to make stuff that's about us, right? About us as people, about our actual needs. We're disabled. We address the disability as a rule from here on out, and that's the best way to go. Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you too, Kyle, that like, if we're following someone doing it, we're engaging in some way. Yes. However, my goal is that we don't have to do that because we're busy working on our own stuff instead of trying to mimic what's already out there. That means autistic people, make sure you're not joining a cult, and make sure that your friends are also building mindseted people, and you should be fine. Like, I don't think autistic people should spend a lot of time with doing as arriving people. I don't think we should. I don't think it helps us. I think we need to avoid it. Even if society says no, but you have to, don't. It's not worth it. So that's how I think
Or maybe put
cope.
in other words, you don't want to spend time with people who say that the things that you find valuable are worthless.
Right. Right. Yes, that's real well said. I like that. So okay, so then getting back to like, because all that's going to distract us, any autistic person will get distracted by that and not work on their COVID, or their haven, right? Their cove, whatever. We need to work on our space. 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 It's like, this just has to be installed as like the thing we are doing over and over and over again, because it's going to get challenged by the external world too much right now, way too much. And the external world has created this facade of like, oh, our political systems and our governance is here to solve problems. No, it's not. There's so many direct ways it could work on the problems that it's claiming that it's going to solve. It's not. It's mentally ill. It's mentally ill. We can have our own mental illness issues as autistic people, but we don't need to have theirs too, okay? We don't need to be responsible for their mental illness. This is crazy. We have a disability. I can acknowledge that I think my society is out of their mind, but I'm not responsible for it. How could I possibly do that as a disabled person? I have to make myself healthy, and that's my best chance of anybody paying attention and wanting to be healthy, is they see us against all odds being healthy. And then they might ask, like, wait a second, I thought that's impossible. I thought they're supposed to be worse off than us. That's still not why we're doing it. You know what I mean? But if it makes you feel better, that's the best hope that you have for people who are not autistic, valuing what we're talking about.
I was just going to add briefly to the cove analogy that we had, right? If you see yourself as a ship that is in the cove, if you're not adequately maintaining your ship and it doesn't have all the pieces that it's supposed to have in order to be able to, to sail properly, right, to function, then when you're going to go out there, then, various conditions at sea and various things that you meet up are going to potentially sink you, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared and fill in for any breakages. And then, of course, you got to be careful who you choose to sail with in terms of other ships, right? Because if you obviously have your own little kinks and breakages here and there, right? Or if weather will come in, the storm will come in, and it will cause stress. If there's somebody else there who's got their own issues and they're not taking care of themselves in the same way, they could lead you astray. Their own breakages could then flood you in return as well. So like a lot of it, I think, is to do with personal boundaries as well.
Yeah, I get really good at saying, like, my personal boundary is people that do as arrive are going to keep doing as arriving, and I cannot stop them. And if I try, they're just going to do it harder and hurt me. That makes no sense. That's not a strategy. That's destroying the good that I can do, which is doing is building, because people won't stop doing is arriving. I know they're not stopping doing is arriving. I know it hurt. I know in the quiet moments, a lot of people are like, yeah, this really hurts and this isn't okay. So I know that's happening. But I also am not going to be able to speed that up in any way other than me get better at doing is building. That's it. And people who want to get better at doing is building. I happen to have a disability that made this the only option that makes any sense for me to try to do. But I think everyone should consider the balance of doing is arriving to doing is building that they're engaged in, so that if somebody's doing is arriving and they're in this current environment, to resist anybody suggesting, hey, that's not okay, can you stop? So they'll double down is what I'm saying. So then I can't hear you. Y'all can't hear Kyle, right?
No, we cannot.
He is not on this realm.
I have not been hearing him.
Okay, so Justin, the metaphor of doing, they asked me what I mean by doing by building. So by building, I mean I believe there's two forms of motivation that our brains are using. Okay, one of them is not accessible depending on your disability. The other one seems to be more accessible but discouraged by society. So the latter is building, the former is arriving. Arriving is a metaphor of moving through space to a target location. Right? Like that's your goal, that's the finish line, that's the trophy, that's the award, that's the certificate, that's the accolades, etc. The other one is picking something up and then manipulating it, manos, hand, manipulating it with your mind and your body to make it different. and then you put it down, and that's where we would say something like, do you grasp the concept? So these metaphors are in our language, take it one step at a time, or are you picking up what I'm putting down? Yeah, the album is the building, right?
Or get a handle on the situation.
Get a handle on the situation, yeah. So there's the building is like a holding metaphor, and the arriving is a walking metaphor, and that hierarchy is establishing this walking metaphor, that you arrived there first, and there's a sense of like knowing the lay of the land. Like, this can be a useful thing to have somebody that's like a master adventurer who's explored a lot of places, but really human beings do a lot of work just putting things together and taking them apart and changing and iterating on the design. And we need to have more awareness of that, especially for people who don't understand hierarchy and don't understand moving through this field of goals and signposts and all these things. You're supposed to be like, you're supposed to be over here, and now you're supposed to be over there. So the two ways of thinking about this is like, there's where am I, but there's also what is this. And you can ask what is this about yourself. Like, we can be meta cognizant and sort of like interested in the phenomenon of our own mind and what all that is doing. But the basic of it is, where am I isn't going to be as interested in what is this. So you need times to be like, what is this? And I think for autistic people, that's what we're missing in our lives, is time to be like, no, but what is this?
But there's something interesting, Shane, because like I'm also getting images of, creation, right? Building, crafting things versus, exploring, gaining acquisition of resources out there in the world, right? The adventure idea. And I guess every single human being has that to different extents, because even I notice in myself, sometimes I do like to go out and explore and experience and bring things back home. But I think at my core, I generally like to create the stuff that I like to create. But maybe those doing is arriving people, perhaps I wonder what they're like in general, their core, or is it for the most of them that they truly only know the one way? You have to go out there and take what you need, so to speak. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is this working now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to add something just quickly. Like, so people could be going trying to arrive at a place that's already built, or they could be arriving at a place that they built in their mind. I'm saying we do these things all the time collectively in like some sort of fused, already connected way. Like, it's not truly separate, but what ends up happening is, if you tell people, okay, so this is a system of motivation. Let me back this up. So how do you know you want to do something? I'm going to suggest there's wanting to go somewhere, and then people will acknowledge that you went that far, and you'll get like a little badge or a little keepsake that says you went that far. And then it lets people know to trust you potentially about going that far. How did you do it? How did you get there? How did you accomplish that? How did you arrive there? Versus being motivated to see if you can make something more complex. Make a thing. Make the understanding of the thing more complex. So I'm arguing, if this makes sense, that there's two forms of motivation.
I wanted to ask a question. I'm wondering if it's this might be a not like inner timer maybe, would it be an appropriate time to maybe, unless people aren't done or something, but to kind of like, okay, there's people out there who are going to keep trying to stop you, and you know, to greater or lesser degrees, you may or may not feel judged by them or judged by the things you're doing, or some kind of combination of feeling negative, and then especially about oneself. But I think it's just something I've noticed, that conversation seems to be, not just here, but just in general, seems to be a long conversation that happens frequently and takes up an entire time, which maybe is helpful for people. But I guess I'm wondering, like, is there ever an appropriate time to, like, okay, that's there or whatever, but what about some like positive examples? Like, what can you actually do? Because I think, I don't know, does that make any sense? Or
It does.
Yeah, like basically you're basically saying this thing has already been built, and I think everyone has the blueprints and thus understanding of it. So let's work on a different thing.
as a possible, yeah, yeah, exactly, pretty much that, yeah. Because yeah, otherwise it can just be 3 hours of all the reasons why people hate you, and it's like, okay, like that's built, but what are you going to be able to actually do positively to have positive environments? Like, the whole topic of this is diorama, right? So it's like, what's an example of a diorama you have in your house versus, oh, all these people hate me, and it's like, yeah, all these people hate us for 4 hours straight. Everybody hates you. It's like, okay.
I think what you're adding in here right now, Kyle, is like an extremely good addition. Like, I'm very glad you brought that in. And then, like, I'll just take what you said and say, like, Jane, what are some examples that you have, since you're working on this the most and have it most functional, of dioramas in your life or house?
So I think it's been altered a bit since I have my partner here, so that's exciting. And then we've been talking about like how to get the next iteration of it. Like, I need a different bed situation, so I've realized that it was functional earlier because it gave me a little pocket universe, and eventually we're going to make a loft bed again, but like a proper one that fits 2 human beings, because I just got like a kid bed. And it was cool, but now it doesn't make any sense. But eventually we'll do that, because I learned that that's a nice feeling to have the separation between the sleep area and the rest of the room. But we're going to have to take this bed apart, maybe put it into the garage at some point, but we got to figure that out, because also now it's like that's not going to work long term. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at my clothes as well. Like, I kind of have a decent clothing system that took forever to figure out, that like I really like clear plastic drawers for clothing, because you can move them around and see what's in them pretty easily. So I thought about that a little bit today, and I've been working on that. And I'm currently moving around stuff that is semi out of, well, maybe not out of place, but like I need to have a better placement for my art supplies. But for now, they can live in this temporary thing by my clothes, because at the very least, I use some of this for clothes design. So it's not totally foreign to it. But I've been working on that today and trying to get to a baseline, because we haven't had enough time to work on the next step of building the space. So I need this baseline to be not as disrupted during the week, because now we're spending too much time cleaning just to get back to baseline. But I also think there's too much of my stuff and not enough of Kyle's stuff in the space too. So I'm trying to fix that. Hold on a sec. I'm also going to ask Kyle something.
What is it? Is there not enough room up there? That roller? Just put it over here for now.
Yeah. I bought 8 of the same $3 shirt, and it's been amazing for my clothing interaction, because I just wear that same shirt And
Heck
when
yeah.
one of them gets dirty, I put on another one. And I've already, like, I just have one pair of shorts and pants that I actually like. I have other ones for when those are dirty. And I alternate based on body heat because that's a personal issue I have of my body heat management is just a big thing I have to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I got rid of all of my random different socks, so I only have short socks and long socks of the same type, so they don't have to be paired up or anything.
Hmm.
And so my drawers are extremely simplified now, right? Like I have a sock drawer, I have underwear drawer, I have a shirt drawer, and then I have a couple other drawers for all of my other clothes that I never wear, and that's it, right? Which is great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to get.
Having a simple.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I won't forget what I was gonna say.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to get to a simplified enough state that we can start eliminating things we don't need, and then rearrange the furniture situation and get like a bed that works. Because right now we don't have that yet.
I was gonna echo that having a simplified clothing arrangement, wardrobe, closet, whatever it may be, in one's particular case. I think it's like an underrated build to have in your environment because it's just then the clothing part just becomes automatic for day to day. Then if you want to dress up for a special occasion or whatever, you have a space for those,
right?
That you go to that area, and then it's not like, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if somebody else is hearing what support is saying, I want to second that one because that's what I do, and it just makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for like myself especially, I feel like I get really hit by decision fatigue, and so like small barriers to things are like disproportionately affect my outcomes and being able to actually do things. And just making decisions becomes one of those barriers. So just like deciding what to eat for breakfast, deciding what to eat, right, like 3 times a day, deciding what meal to make is another thing that's like hugely affects my quality of life, which like it doesn't for people who don't have disability, right? And yeah, I think clothing is that same sort of thing. So I'm super glad I was able to get rid of that, not have to think about that anymore.
That's awesome.
Yep. So I think it kind of makes me think that we're human beings, right? And so we have a physical body. There's going to be things that are always going to be consistent across all people. It's going to be clothes, food, the bathroom where the hygiene takes place, or to think of it a different way, it's where one is building their hygiene. And with building, usually that implies tools, and then tools are going to need a physical place to exist. And so I think by thinking of maybe like I think of the bathroom, I think of most things as like a toolbox. So like if you were to go look at my toolbox that I use for work, I have bags and they're all labeled with the genre of the tool, and then they go in a specific place in the toolbox, so I know where everything is all the time. And then when I'm done working, if I'm feeling lazy that day, I might just put the stuff on top of each other. But at least once a week, or depending on if the day got slow or not, I'll reorganize the toolbox real quick so it's not just a bunch of stuff scattered. Because I don't know, I have a coworker who just throws his stuff in there, and it's it might take him 5 minutes to find something that should take about 15 seconds to just grab. So, for example, like a bathroom, it's like, okay, you've got your head, hair, you've got your teeth, you've got your whatever. And by placing those, just even if it changes later, by making homes for those things, then one is going to be more likely to probably use them, and that decreases the decision fatigue, I think is a good thing to look at. Because if you get dysregulated because you had to make 15 decisions in the morning, by the time it's time to like do something, you might already be checked out. And then it just kind of becomes Groundhog Day, where it's like a daily process of having to figure stuff out. But if you spend the time, like especially now on a housekeep-a-thon, to put places where they can go, and even if you change it later as you're using it, then the rest of your week you'll have less decisions that you have to make, which leads you to be able to make more decisions for the other stuff you want to make decisions on.
Yeah. I am doing some work on like, okay, well, this hasn't had a home yet, so I'm going to move it to a place that can be a home that like is of the same category, so that like there's a dumping ground, and then that's okay for the time being. The dumping ground can eventually transform into this goes to a real place, and I know where that is.
Yep.
And we haven't talked about it in a long time, but like I think figuring out stations is sort of should be like the foundation before homing thing. Because because things go in and around furniture, but furniture and like floor plan allows you to make stations to actually do things in your habitat.
Yes.
Yep. Like my desk is a giant station that has nested stations within it. So I have a section for musical things. I have a section for like office supply, kind of like extra ink and extra stuff, paper and stuff. And I like my desk a lot because it's got a lot of little cubbies I can put stuff in. So the desk is a station that is multifunctional because I can do my work from there, but then I can also study there. I can also practice arts there just by pulling stuff out of a little bucket, using it, putting stuff back in the bucket. I say bucket, I should say like, a drawer of the cabinet. And then in the bedroom, I have just a cheap shelf. It was like $30 at Home Depot, but it's got 4 or 5 shelves on it, and it's pretty big. It's just plastic. But on that, I have the different shelves are little different micro stations. And I'm a firm believer in, if you want to think ahead of it a little bit, feel free to, but at the same point, I think it's a good skill to develop. Like, well, let me at least just move stuff and just try it out without needing it to be perfect the first time I put stuff away. Because I think what ends up happening is like trying to get it perfect, exactly perfect the very first time. It's probably going to lead towards like maybe not really ever getting around to it. To kind of echo something, even just conceptually that Bright Spear mentioned earlier about like there's these things to do, but not doing it because of a shame that's attached to the actual process itself. I'm not sure, but I think maybe for one of those it might just be maybe something as simple as like,
I think that's because you're setting too high an expectation
and
for
I think
how it should happen.
Yeah, and I think just do it. Don't worry about the mistakes. A little bit of exposure training, like fail it as many times as you need. But if you fail it 15 times but get it right on the 16th time, that's better than it never happening. And if it's a matter of like, you have all your stuff, you're interested in things, putting them in places, and then it turns out you don't quite like where you put it, at least it's all together and you can move it easily or more easy around, right? Again, versus the alternative.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, you're right, but I struggle with that sometimes because I'm pretty good at visualization and imagining things. And I tend to be, well, I'll usually sort of theory craft a system in my
Uh,
mind, or I'll do a blueprint. And then I'll try to make it happen rather than doing it sort of experientially on the
yeah.
ground, right? Trying to play around with things in my hand. But that could be from a place in the past where I didn't have a lot of room to mess up. So that might be, maybe that's what it is.
Maybe I can share this real quick. I think some people here have heard this before, but I'll try to do it quickly. So at my work, technician, audio video technician, so it's all physical materials, cables, devices, your tools, the vacuums, ladders, packing blankets to protect, the furniture on the ground. It is a lot of moving parts and a lot of people who are moving in and out of those parts. So it still kind of comes up to this day at the age of 33 or whatever I am, but especially when I started when I was like 21, I would get a lot of flack like, oh, you're overbuilding it or you're thinking too hard. Like, let's just get started. Let's just get started. Because I would like to look at everything I have. I would just stand still and just look around and start in my mind putting stuff where I want to put it instead of just going and just doing it, right? Because I know eventually I'm going to. I'm not going to stand here for 4 hours. I just need like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe, right? And so it hasn't been until people have worked with me more and kind of seeing the differences where it's like, oh, how are you getting that done so quickly and so nicely? And it's like, well, remember when you were telling me to like not build my little stations and stuff like that? Like, that's why, because I just watched you for the past hour walking back and forth looking for stuff. I have everything I need right in front of me because I thought ahead about it a little bit, right? So I think I think there's a similarity there where it's like I can visualize it in my head, and not to mention I can specifically, it's like that's my natural instinct is to do that, is to make it in my head where the stuff is going to go and then implement it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's actually a skill that can be used. I will say, if I think a balance between the two is what I would advocate
I was
for.
going to say, because this will help me realize this is something adjacent that I figured out recently. It's some people have more of a predisposition for planning and calculation of risk and being careful, and the other side is sort of jumping in without any thought and then sort of adapting and hoping that you'll kind of come out and figure things out, right? And so people tend to be somewhere along that spectrum. But you're right, there's definitely lessons to be learned from both approaches, from planning, but then also from learning to adapt as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
because then if you
Uh,
overplan, it's too rigid, right? It's too
yeah.
rigid if something goes wrong. But then if you don't have a plan, you might miss an important detail.
Exactly. And plus, it might like for me, I'm not very motivated by just jumping in and doing something. I'm motivated by planning ahead. Some people, they're not motivated by planning. I think that's fine. Hopefully they don't share a bedroom with you, right? So then you don't have to ask anyone for permission to think about things the way that you naturally think about them, want to think about them, etc. So, I think that's
Would
kind
you
of a
not say
multi-layered.
would you not say that for your work? I mean, my experience with work and coworkers has been most people, the reason they jump in is often because they want to. I've seen that they want to get lucky and they want to finish tasks as quick as possible with as little mental input as possible because ultimately they don't care too much about the work that they're doing, but they care about other things outside of that work and they want to,
Yeah.
go through it as quickly, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think it's the Jane's thing of doing as arriving, doing as building. If you're, more likely to interact with a doing as building, the comment
But
will
then
always
it
be
doesn't, yeah.
that
Sorry,
you're
go ahead.
taking too long or something. The comment will always be like you're taking too long, you're overthinking it, da 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 da. And I think the more
Yeah. Yeah.
that we just like you just have to at some point, I think that quiet voice that's on your shoulder that's telling you you're not good enough, at some point it just has to become silent or die away because you're doing what you're doing. And the more positive experiences you have of like, hey, that really worked. Hey, that really worked. Wow, look at me, that really worked. And I got better at it. And I did this and I did that. That quickly overshadows any of the negative comments. You know what I mean?
True. I was thinking too that there's something complicated about this because I think those people, and then I know this in myself sometimes too, is like, they want to do their tasks as quickly as possible, at the beginning of the day, right? There's the whole thing of waking up early, hustle or whatever, right? But I think what I truly see in a lot of people is they want to do that work because ultimately it's meaningless to them. And then they want to have those solid few hours later on in the evening where they can chill out to like a show, smoke some weed, escape through something, or maybe at its sort of like conceptual core, they almost like want to dream, right, about what they want to do, sort of, I guess, to the next point that they want to arrive to, and then they'll start the journey or like the race again the next day. And I don't know, it's sort of weird because what's weird to me is that I'm like you, or like all of you in a sense, where I do like to take my time sometimes, and I don't like to be rushed. I like to think. I have that capacity. But then a lot of the time, a lot of the things, errands that I have to do, I really could not care about because I have to do them in order to survive. I tend to
Uh-huh.
rush them sometimes, and I want to do them as quickly as possible because I want to do the stuff that is actually meaningful or will derive meaning to me later on in the day, and then the cycle
Uh-huh.
repeats itself the next day. So it's almost like a combination of both systems. But then again, Jane did say that it's not just one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So, because it's like, what, if you don't mind, like, what was the area in question that you were like in your room or whatever?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
What was the when you first started the Housekeep-a-thon? My attention was kind of split between two things, so I don't remember
Uh,
what. If I remember correctly, you were talking about like some area in your room you had to like put together or clean or something like that, and that's what was.
Yeah. So the thing with that was, like a few months ago, I started, I guess, painting sort of like on an easel for the first time in my own space, right? I didn't have a studio externally, but I have a lot of space in my apartment, and I thought, why don't I just do that? And I was finding it progressively really difficult. And I guess, earnestly thought at the time that the reason that I couldn't do it was because of the messiness in some parts of my house, all the pieces not being organized in their appropriate, houses, as you put it, right?
Uh-huh.
But I think that was false because that was more so it was a rationalization because it was something that I could control. What I couldn't control and I didn't realize at the time was that I still was struggling with shame around doing art and then potentially being seen and visible for that, right? Because it's almost like
Uh-huh.
if I finished that one painting that I didn't finish, then people would have to see it. And it's not even that people would see it and criticize and give bad opinions, but it's the fact that they might think that it's good. I might then go ahead and want to do some more of that. And then the people in my life who I guess I'm most afraid of to shame me, like my parents who I've estranged myself from, they would catch wind of that, they would see that. And that sort of is the most, I guess, vulnerable, disorienting thing that, emotionally my heart kind of feels would happen. So maybe that's the reason why I couldn't paint. And I thought I need to externalize it. I need to find like a studio elsewhere, like in a different place, which I did, but I didn't actually end up painting anymore either, when I did
I
do
see. Yeah.
that. Yeah. If this all
Okay.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
So yeah, a little different than the diorama thing. My brain was connecting dots.
Hmm.
That's still though. I appreciate you sharing that part though. Um,
No problem.
but
I
I
think it
think.
was, yeah, it's shame. I think shame does play to lower. Like you shouldn't be ashamed to, especially to do the, because I was watching something else to do with people pleasing today, right? And so when you have been excessively criticized or shamed in the past for behaviors and ways that went against what your caregivers and society around you wanted, then obviously you're going to want to people please in order to gain validation and approval, right? To be able to get your needs met, especially when you're a kid, because you're not able to do that by yourself. But what that results in as you get older is that you're going to get the habit of doing everything to please other people and be malleable and a chameleon, except with yourself in your own
Uh.
privacy. You're not going
Uh.
to meet your own needs. You'll be afraid to do so for the fear of being seen as selfish,
Yeah,
if
that's
that makes
interesting for
sense.
sure. No, I think it made sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious thing maybe for some people, but it wasn't until I had to go through these experiences, figure it out.
I think it's another one of those things that's like, regardless of whether or not it's apparent to other people or not, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't need to mean anything for the individual, right? So it's like, because we do, and I think depending on the culture of which we're raised in as well, and then the people around, but it's like, oh, you didn't recognize that right away, like the rest of us, like there's something wrong with you, and it's like, well, that doesn't actually need to mean that at all. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah, definitely.
whether or not
Yeah.
it took someone, it's like the Zen student asks the Zen master, like, oh, how long does it take someone to reach enlightenment? And the master's like, 3 minutes, 3 days, 3 years, 30 years, 3 lifetimes. Like it there's no answer to that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. You're
It
just
shouldn't
doing. You're
matter.
yeah.
But
You're
in
just,
this
exactly.
society, yeah, in this society, you're led to believe that it's as you said, you're too slow. I've had this not just with like the work that I've done, but I even have this with like I would eat too slowly. I would take too slowly to change or to do things. Kind of like it's a very good point that Lilith made about the issue with because of decision fatigue. Because you care about the way because your body, you're aware of your own body, its own needs, perception. So you're aware of how your decisions impact the environment around you, which then like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you act in a certain way, the environment's going to act back in that appropriate way towards you. So obviously you don't want to act in ways that might potentially damage you. But a lot of people are led to live and to believe that
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They can just do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that kind of it touches back again to the main thing is like, if one is living in this world that, whether through design or circumstance, whatever it is hostile to, like, specifically for the purposes of this stream, specifically for the autistic person,
Mhm.
you know, the world hopefully will change. It has been changing. Like we don't really look kindly on people lobotomizing autistic people anymore. You know what I mean? Like that would have just been normal. Um, so in the meantime, though, can't can't tell everyone else, what to do, and can't figure everyone else out all the time. So possibly one of the best things that you can do, though, is make sure that where you're spending a lot of your time, like your house, for example, you're going to be spending a lot of time in general, that environment is built in a way that is conducive to your own desires and needs and wants and dreams and the stuff that you're building.
Yes.
So I think by having, I think a good way of looking at it is like you're going to have the stuff that you need to interact with: clothes, hygiene, food. Simplifying those, unless you love it, right? Like if your special interest is cooking, then have the craziest kitchen in the world. If your special interest is not cooking and you're just like, I just need to eat to feed the body, like I don't really care about the food otherwise, then go full blown into Sam's Foods. Like we've been eating a lot of split peas and rice, because it's got everything you need, and it's cheap, it's easy to make. You can make a lot of it for nothing, and that
Yeah.
simplifies the eating process by a lot.
Yeah.
And we're eating something healthy, which is in turn good for your brain, which is a good turn for you're managing your affect and everything.
Split pea is one of my same foods from when I was a kid, so it works really, really well for my brain. I can adopt to that like nothing. It actually feels like, when I was a kid, that's one of the things where I was like, I wish I could eat this every day. That would be heaven. I'm like, oh yeah, it is heaven. I was right. Also, I wanted to add to
Yeah.
this too. Like, I know we all got slightly different feedback as kids, but I really did internalize some unhelpful stuff where it's like, oh, Jane's too in her own head. So it's not okay for me to stop paying attention to other people. I have to constantly think about other people. But I'm not that doesn't make any sense. I internalize somebody saying to me, it looks like Jane's brain is doing something different. Can she act like she's doing what our brains are doing? And I can't. The answer is no. So even when
I have a comment.
Okay, well, let me add one thing. Even when I do try to think about other people, I'm not doing what I was getting criticized to do. I can't do it.
Yeah. I think it's another one of those ones where there's a cultural term that people use, like, oh, that person's in their head, right? And then their meaning of that
Overthinking.
word, huh?
Overthinking.
It could be that, and that's what I'm saying is that it could be that, and it could be a whole bunch of other things. Is that when you ask somebody, this has been my experience, when someone says a colloquialism, but what do you mean by that? Well, it's like what everyone else means by it. I know, but I just want to know how you're using it. You could ask 5 people and get 7 different answers. And so I think part of the problem then too is like, especially for an autistic person, they hear something, they're going to just take that as word for word meaning, literal, etc., right? But the problem is that when the person said it, they could have meant it a whole couple different ways, because one way when people say that, they're saying, oh, this person's too in their head, right? They're pointing it towards the person that they're objectifying as an object, right? Like this object does this thing. Instead of saying that's a person, let me ask them about themselves and understand what I'm clocking their behaviors as, right? So instead of doing that, they say, oh, this person's in their head. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times when someone's saying that, they're actually saying, you're not listening to me in the way that I want to be listened to. That's actually what they're saying a lot of the times. So it had nothing to do with you.
You're not being present with the situation.
No, not that you're not being present with the situation. You're not attending to me. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody could say that, oh, you're in your head, and they do mean, oh, this person's not paying attention to their environment, right? That's one thing. But a lot of times when people are saying that, they're saying you're not interacting with me in the way that I want you to. So I'm going to say something about you to get you to change the way that you're behaving towards me.
Yeah.
That's not the one that I've gotten, but I've gotten things like my parents telling me that, like, you philosophize too much. Like you make things too complicated than they should be.
I get, if I make an autobiography, it's going to be called The Girl That Thought Too Much.
Right, and I know, like with Rose specifically, it's your parents don't want you thinking at all. They just want you doing what they think you should do and tell you should do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Yeah.
So you just gotta do, and it's easier said than done, but you just gotta do what you're gonna do. Get your environment so that you're happy inside of it to a degree, and then you're gonna have maybe not a much easier, but you will have an easier time out in the world if you know that when you get home, you've got special interest 1, special interest 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all in stations.
Yeah.
All the stuff that you don't like, having to pick out clothes or pick out food, whatever it is, that stuff is already just automatic as much as it could be without a robot doing it, right? And then you're gonna have a better probability of being happy, you know what I mean? In general, in my opinion.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and also, like, I think, how to put this? Like, why should other people get to be happy and not you? I don't get it. Especially if, like, okay, the things that I care about and that make me happy are objectively nice things. Like, I've thought these things through from a philosophical perspective as well. And I'm like, yeah, I'm quite confident the things I'm interested in are easy to argue for because they're just objectively good ideas. And so, why on earth should I then, because I may be somewhat outnumbered in some situations, worry about the situations where I'm outnumbered all the time? Like, I'm not outnumbered in my home. Why should my home reflect that?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody coming through and, you know what I mean, they got a checklist and they're like, oh, you didn't put it the way that we would.
Right.
Like, I'll say this, right? Like, what I like at night now, I like playing like the little 15, 20 minutes of Game Boy Advance game, right? I personally don't need that to be objectively good or, to be honest, objectively bad, because all I know is that when somebody else is placing their values on something, that's also their own subjective opinion. So at the end of the day, you're the one having to lug around your body all day. So, I mean, again, as long as you're not out there like hurting people and stuff like that, then if someone says something, it's just like, okay, you're not the one moving this meat machine, so who cares what you have to say? Honestly, genuinely, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to help. It's like, okay, well, that's fine, but also Like you have to make me feel bad in order to help me. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's not.
Like you literally, yeah,
It's not doing what they're saying it's doing, and they're not. They're
yeah.
not. You know, at a certain point, you can say to somebody like, "Well, then you're not very good at helping. I'm just trying to help." You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also like to come back
So,
with like something I actually need help with. And like, oh, could you apply to jobs for me? Right.
Mm.
yeah,
I
that's
genuinely
something I
need
got to
help with
do right
that.
now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to help, thanks. If not, shoo.
Yeah.
So just make your space how you want it and how you need it to be. And it's another one of those things. Very rarely are people, they just, day one, as soon as they're 2 years old, they're a master at some task that they did. Most people, it's trial by error for everything you learn, right?
Mhm.
So same thing applies to getting your diorama set up. Like, do it, think about it ahead of time as much as you want. You know what I mean? No, there's no rush on that. It's not going to be like, all right, 2 weeks from now, send me pictures and I'm going to judge your guys' living arrangements, right? Like, that's not there. And even if you wanted it to be there, I'd be like, no, dude, that's way too much work.
Yeah.
So I would say, think about the stuff you like, think about the stuff that you look around and be like, I don't know if I need that, or I'm not sure if I need that or not. But instead of getting fatigued about it, I know for sure that I'm not super into it. Maybe I will be later. Let me go put this into the currently not super into it, but possibly might be into it later area, right? I have an area for that. You know what I mean? Then it's not just all spread out. But then the stuff that I do really like, I could walk to it right now in 2 seconds and go grab it right now because I love it. You know what I mean? And that's my diorama that I'm building in conjunction with Jane's diorama, and it's making a 2-person diorama now. But if you just look, you can see the 2-person diorama, and you can see the little clicks and clacks of the individual person's diorama nested within it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because what am I gonna do? Go up to Jane and be like, hey, so I think the ballet thing, is that over yet? Can we move your diorama around? It's like, no, that's
Right.
weird, right?
Right.
So if I'm a person living in the room, and I would never even think to say that, I don't even think it's true, to be honest, obviously. So if I'm a person who's living in the space and I don't think that, and I would never say it, then obviously in one's own space, or if someone is cohabitating, then for sure you got to have your own diorama set up. You know what I mean? That's just, what else are you supposed to do? Just otherwise, just go sit in a cardboard box, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
You get 3 colored pencils per decade. This is your payment for living in our Borg system of no joy capitalism.
Yeah. Like that's the other thing is like you're supposed to feel guilty if you say no because a bunch of people have said yes to this system that we're currently in. And my opinion is that a bunch of people had the ability to cope, and they have no idea that they did that. Like they're not consciously thinking about how they're coping and how that ability pans out. I don't think I have the ability to cope, and I don't think I can get the ability to cope, and I don't envy the ability to cope. So I'm going to have to do something different, and probably there's a lot of people who need that different thing. So if I just work on building the different thing with other people who understand it, that's literally all I have to do. That's it. That's all I have to do. I'm under no obligation to try to justify what other people did, or make them feel better about that being the option they had. I can't do that for other people. I can't try their way of doing it when they've never tried mine. Why should I? Like that already establishes a hierarchy of like the way the normal person coped with it is the way everybody has to cope with it first, and then you get to try your way. No, I literally can't do that. I'm disabled at doing that. I'm not going to try. Every time that I've tried to do it was bullshit. I didn't actually do anything. It was all nonsense.
I think it's important to keep in mind too that even amongst the quote unquote normal people, they're not realizing it, but they're also having completely different ways of building up their house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not one to one. Every single one is completely different from one another. But a person who's not autistic, right? A person who's not autistic might certainly have a lot of things in their house that look like an autistic person would have it. Not because only autistic people like making stuff. That's silly, right?
Mhm.
But they like making stuff more than the general public, for example. So someone might say, like, well, why would you dedicate that much space to your knickknacks when you could have like a really cool sound system? It's like, I don't know, maybe because I don't want to sit around and listen to music all day. I'll just put on headphones. Like, what's the fucking, what do you like? Why do you care so much? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's something I've gotten really good at over the past 10 years. Is like, why do you care so much about what I'm doing? I don't understand that, right?
This is good.
And honestly, when you confront somebody with that and see them have to make an answer, then you could just engage with it or disengage with it as you please. But a lot of times I notice too, that's another good way, especially if it's somebody you have to be around a lot, to they just won't come and ask you. They won't talk to you like that anymore because it's like you made them look like an idiot. Because it's like, yeah, that's a dumb thing to think. It's a dumb thing to say out loud. It makes no sense. There's no reason for it. And you just wanted to have a bad attitude today. I don't know what to tell you. That's not my problem. I can't fix that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If you were to say, oh, I'm a little bit grumpy today, we could have worked with that. Then you had to come over here and start looking at what I was doing, looking what was in my bowl. And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm eating. I didn't ask you what you were eating. So why do I have to answer up a million questions as to what I'm doing just because what I'm doing is a little bit different? Hell no. If we all just did the same thing day in and day out, we would still good luck having computers. That's all I'll say about it. You know what I mean? Like good luck having electricity. Good luck having the idea of clothes. Good luck having anything around you if we all just did the same thing as everybody else all the time. Just because there's going to be a handful of people who have no creativity who just want to come in and start dictating what you do? Hell no. So you like what you like, you make what you like. If it's hard to get to that point, that's perfectly fine too. I would say you don't need to feel bad about that because you don't live in a world that facilitates it. And it's clearly the way that we're doing things clearly doesn't work because look at all the people who are having problems with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the autistic person is like this weird wrinkle in the rough that like needs to be smoothed out. It's like there's a lot of overlap between all kinds of different people. And again, keep in mind the culture you come from as well, because you just happen to live in, especially for us who English speakers. Yeah, you live in a weird chop chop, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It's like it still has like a lot of the whole. We're still heavily influenced by the Catholic Church. Stand up, kneel, pray, sit, stand, kneel, say this prayer, say this prayer, say this prayer, go. Right? That stuff's all. I don't know if they meant to, but they realized that that's the best way to get people to just be mindless drones to just keep making all the food so you can take it from them. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are combating a lot of that stuff. And again, the one of the effective ways to maintain your own body budget, to maintain your own body chemicals, to decrease the stress chemicals that are hitting you, which then decrease your lifespan, which then it decreases your brain's want to like kind of like work on the stuff it wants to, because you're under a constant state of stress and you're under a constant state of threat, even if it's just mentally. Because it's not just mentally. Your brain's probably doing a pretty good job of predicting, if I do this, then someone's going to react negatively this way. But if I do this, someone's going to react negatively this way, or this negative thing might happen. This negative thing might happen. That thought process has been there for a long time. You're not going to fix that overnight. But the next best thing you can do about that is to, where you sleep and where you wake up, have as best you can, and you can always improve it too, is have the stuff that you have a hard time with, clothing, food, get that kind of stuff automatic, over time or now, whatever. And then the stuff that you do like, put more resources into the stuff that you do like, and then, have at it.
Also, okay, so like the why do you care thing is really good. That's really, really, really good. Like why does that person care? So if people if people treat you like it's a big deal that you have to care about their opinion, I'm like, well, what about my opinion of that person? Why don't they care about my opinion of them? Because my opinion of them is they're an asshole and they're not very smart.
Right. And a lot of time it's a kind of person where if you're not like them and do things like them, that's when they're giving you this feedback. And then being told by them that you're not like them is a compliment if you think about it for half a second.
Right.
Right? When they say, "Oh, that's weird," you should think,
Yep.
"Oh, good. This person has verified that I'm not accidentally being like them." Which is
Yes.
the worst thing I could be like.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. If I sit down and think, like, would I ever want to be like this person? Or would I feel like I was cursed by an evil genie? If the answer is cursed by evil genie, then yeah, what the hell? Which yes it is. Like I don't like that. I'm like in fact, you know, to take it out of like who do you think you are? I'm like I'm somebody that admires Mr. Rogers a lot. Is this person acting anything like Mr. Rogers? If the answer is no, then I don't care what they have to say. I don't care. Especially if they sound like somebody that would be mean to Mr. Rogers. If they would bully Mr. Rogers, nah. I'm good. Also, Kyle, can I eat whatever you just made?
gluten-free.
Ooh, there's food. Okay,
Right.
Oh.
I have.
There's also
food.
rice too.
Oh, heck yeah.
People making food is like my favorite thing ever.
It's so great. So if somebody judges you as
gluten-free for
above
sure.
you, okay, wait, let me go. I'm gonna maybe Kyle, can you help me with this too? Because they've judged themselves as being above you, as if their opinion, usually to suppress you, is more important than whatever it is you want. Is how I feel they treat us. Okay, so if somebody judges that they're above you, wouldn't you judge that that's a shitty person? So then why are we caring? Like shitty people exist. Even if shitty people have power, they're still a shitty person. So why am I validating their power by paying attention to them? We made up money.
And when we say why are we paying attention to them, it's good to remember, oh, I did it at first because I was a child and I just had to pay attention to the behavior of everyone around me because that's how I learn. But now you know you don't want to be learning from this person. And so you need to find a way to update the paying attention to what they say that you started doing as a child.
Yeah. And these are very loud people, right? So they're trying to get more attention than they naturally would have.
Mm-hmm.
So the people
because
yeah, go ahead.
if they're that kind of person, they naturally shouldn't be getting any attention.
Correct.
Because they're not doing anything interesting to other human beings.
They're not doing anything new. They're not originating any ideas. That's why this can spiral forever. Is like there's people who have that behavior, and it's not about us. Like they would do it at a wall. They would do it at a child. They would do it at a dead person who's just nice. So why, while we're alive, should we humor
these kind there's the kind of people who will go on like if when Mr. Rogers died, they go on a webpage talking about it and they would say, "Oh, this guy sucked." Or this guy was probably a pedophile or whatever. They would do anything to put someone else down so that they feel up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think another thing to keep in mind too is often so it's kind of hard to say because there's just so many ways a person can be, right? So when we say like this type of person, in my experience, it's usually like maybe we do need to like think about things in like a person with this kind of feel of habits and thought processes, right? Because it's like this type of person implies a rigid type of person, whereas it all helps to look at the behaviors more. And I think it also lets us, it gives us an easier way of looking at those behaviors so looking at those behaviors relative to maybe where that person's coming from. So you might have 5 people who all 5 of them do the kind of like, oh, you're doing that wrong. We all do it this way, right? 5 people, the behavior on it's the same, but then if we really were to investigate investigate the individual from, they might have habit or propensity from various different ways. Like some of them because their parents were mean, or it might have been because their parents were kind of absent, or it might be because their parents might have been nice to them, but they were mean to other people. So it's like it could be a whole different thing that can also help kind of take down the feeling of constant necessary, like you might still need to be vigilant, but it might kind of the way that vigilance can be kind of felt, because then it's not it's a little bit more open-ended and a little bit more like, well, let me just wait and see what this is. Because I think some people, like the people who kind of like have some like negative comment, etc., like it's unfortunate for them, but they probably have more people dislike them than the amount of people who dislike you. Like they probably have a long list of people that, and it might be like, it seems like they're around a bunch of people all the time, right? But when you really look at their life, they've probably pushed a lot of people away. They've probably made a lot of people pissed off. They probably have a lot of family members who don't even like them, because a lot of people are just like, no, that's just what they're doing. Like, I don't get it, but I'm fine, right? The people who are out there prodding and pushing and judging and saying stuff and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think that's a lower population than the general public. I think it seems to me like the general public, for the most part, is probably a little bit like either, oh, that's cool, but okay. Well, I'm not gonna say you can do anything about it, because what the hell, that'd be weird, right? So they're the weird ones.
Up quite a bit, Kyle. Like very short, little breaking ups, but often.
How's this now? Is that
I
better?
think you'd have to talk
see.
a little longer, probably.
I think if I talk, then maybe I am going to talk.
Yeah, okay.
I think if I talk, then maybe I'm going to talk.
I think it sounded
If I think I
better,
talk,
probably.
I think okay. I think it's because I had my phone in my pocket and it was pushing on the cable.
Ah.
I'm using a wired headset today. But anyways, long story short, I think we speak English. We have a phrase that's this type of person. I don't have a problem with it per se, but I do wonder if we were to kind of expand our vocabulary. And I recommend thinking in terms less of this type of person and more in terms of this kind of field of behaviors can often lead to like better insight. And then I think it's always worth remembering too that people who do exhibit those types of behaviors are genuinely disliked by a lot of people because it's weird and it's annoying and it's not helpful. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, cool. You have the ability to talk, which it seems like only humans and maybe birds can do, and you decided, or you're brainwashed to just be a negative person and be hurtful and stuff like that. And that's the choice you made. I guess I'm not gonna feel bad about myself. If anything, I feel bad for you that this is what you chose to do with such a gift. It's amazing that we can talk. It's amazing that we can convey information. It's amazing what you can do with your brain. You, the listener, you, the conversational partner. It's amazing what you're capable of doing, truly. And the fact that someone wants to take the same basic bits, the mouth, the lungs, the brain, take that and to try to make you feel bad, make anyone else feel bad, they're a loser.
And I think maybe there's a skill of how to be less aware of those people, even though the internet is currently boosting those people. That behavior is currently getting artificially boosted in the internet. So we're supposed to be using language to communicate with each other, and then we're stuck communicating about these individuals who are using language to not communicate anything of value, but to do this kind of mythologizing about themselves, like, oh, look at how impressive I am. No.
Yeah. Look at all the cool stuff that you can do. You know what I mean? That's going to be it might be a little bit rough at first because the brain might have already dedicated so much of its growth towards like being vigilant and whatever you do must be wrong because all the times that have life, there's no shame about that. But just by looking at your brain, truly what it is, unless we discover a soul or something, your brain is essentially an organic machine that just stuff comes in, stuff comes out, stuff comes in, stuff comes out. And so if your brain has had to develop a lot of self scrutiny, a lot of second guessing, a lot of negative things, it's going to naturally tend towards that because you've already built the neural pathway for that relative to your own brain. So working on the stuff that makes you happy, it's going to seem weird at first because your brain has to change itself a little bit. It has to put the neurons that you have, those neurons have to grow out their, I think it's dendrites, right? Dendrites and the axon. Those physical cells are going to have to expand, grow, and make connections with one another to create the neural pathway to interact with the thing that you like more and more. So at first, it's going to seem really weird. Like, I feel like I'm not doing something right. I feel like there should be a problem here. That's probably going to happen. But I think the best thing you can do is just stick to the script and just work on something you like. And even if it's something you normally like, but maybe you don't like it at that moment, try something else you like, or try it anyways. Or, right? As long as you keep trying to build the stuff you like, I think that's going to have a much better payoff at the end versus not being able to work on what you like. You know what I mean? Those meals are pretty good, huh?
Sims game right now. I was like, oh, you know what I haven't gotten to play for a while? Hmm. Let's see here. Where am I? So that should be up to date. Hmm. Okay. Anything else? And it's only 2:27, but I'm feeling kind of fatigued. Oh, guess what? I have to have hip surgery. Nah. So if I haven't mentioned that on stream, I'm gonna have a weird period where I need to get my hip fixed. I was born with it, and they just never detected it. But they are still within the window where they can like do the gold standard surgery that they do. So I'm gonna go. I mean, the cool thing is I'm probably gonna be in the pediatric unit, so there'll be lots of like cartoons and fun stuff and the fun food. So that's kind of neat. I may have to be there for a little bit recovering. It depends. I'm not sure how fast the recovery process is, but yeah. Um, Anywho, I'll find out what the game plan is on Wednesday, but I will be prepping the space for that at some point is the guess assumption probably likely outcome. Kind of crazy. I was saying it feels like autism part 2 where I'm like, what else was wrong with me as a baby that nobody ever noticed in time for me to not be at the tail end of this being useful to even know?
I'm gonna make spaghetti for dinner. Yes.
Yeah, it would be nice if they just had like, I mean, maybe they do and we just don't know about it, but it would be nice if there was like some kind of like a grant or something where it's like, all right, I'll still work and stuff like that, but I just need a pool of time per month that, or maybe a pool of time for every 2 weeks, whatever, a pool of time. There's somebody who, echoing. I can hear myself. Hold on. Oh, that should be good then. Yeah, a pool of time for somebody who's like a healthcare worker or whatever. Like help me check on my money or help me do these applications or whatever. Like the kind of like, you know, the stuff, the difficulty parts. I feel like that would have a huge, if we want to talk about economy, that would have a huge economic benefit.
That's what we should have. And I think like advocating for real solutions for autistic people is going to mean testing them out on a small scale. That's what I'm arguing for during these streams, is like that's more important than any other idea we could have, in my opinion, is testing out on the small scale and then showing that it works, and then saying that like, look, do you mean that all citizens are going to be included in your promises of citizenship, or did you not mean that? Because you can't have it both ways at this point. And I'm saying the only way for autistic people to actually be participating on the level that we're capable of is for you to have accommodations for us as adults that sound normal, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I don't care. It's you know what I mean? Like it's like that's just bullshit. I'm not gonna be fighting with somebody who believes that. It's stupid. They're just wrong. I don't need to argue against something stupid. I really don't. I just have to do the thing that the person who's arguing for the stupid things is unaware of and oblivious to anyways. Like they can't even perceive what I'm talking about, so there's no point in me worrying about it anymore. And I don't care if they're going to be in charge of the, you know, health and human services for my country anymore. I don't care. I don't care. They're wrong, and it doesn't matter how many ways somebody who is wrong tries to inflate their importance. They're not important because they're wrong. The end. It's more important to do things that make sense than to worry about somebody who's wrong trying to throw their weight around. I don't care. And they probably won't anyway. They don't care about us. So, yeah, so I'm just thinking about that more and how to maintain my sanctuary of that. And make it better. Not even just maintain it. It's not even that good yet. I don't know how to do that. I'm learning how to do that too. Where is the UI extension? I think it's in main mods. No. Hmm. Was that? You're done? I I think I'm honestly done. I think I might be done. Are we good? Are we good to like end a little early so I can I think I'm just tired. And some of it might be like my so I did tear my labrum and it like had been torn and then it definitely got a little more torn and I think my body's actually repairing part of it because it feels a little bit better. Well, it feels significantly better after rest and getting the inflammation down and it's a cleft. So if you ever tear your labrum, fun facts. So you can have it separate. So it's supposed to be it's like kind of a lattice that connects to the bone and it's never supposed to be taken off of that. And there's different ways that they repair it surgically. That one doesn't you can't really fix, but if there, it's connected on the bone but there's a little split in it, that's what a cleft is. Um it can wiggle into a spot where your body can start to glue it together because it can actually fuse it back with like basically like a form of scar tissue that's like a cartilage based scar tissue. It's just a thing. um and my body may be actually successfully repairing little pieces of it, which is nice, but when they repair it they'll just sew it back together, and that's why the sewing works, because your body does glue it back together. Anyways, but so my body may be trying to glue it, which is why I'm so freaking tired. Um, I think I'm good. I think we're gonna stop early today. Um, yeah, because we did a lot, and then I'm gonna do the Wednesday night thing, and that's gonna be talking about cult conditioning and we're gonna go over the bite model and the influence continuum and work on that and acknowledging when and where we see it in society at large. Autistic people can be vulnerable to cults for specific reasons that are unique to us, so I think we need to defend against that. Did I start listening to the podcast? Yes, I did. I did. Although, did you send me a specific podcast? Now I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. Am I wrong? Yeah. Yes, I have. Yes. He's cool. His podcast is cool. Um but yeah, let me check in with chat. We need to be able to both ands are good. Yeah, both ands. We need less dichotomous stuff. Too much dichotomy. Too much. It's too much. It's over when people do splitting, all things are in this bucket or that bucket. It distorts things. I think most people have at this point okay, you know how we talk about masking with autism? I'll say one point to finish this. I think that people are adopting a sort of dissociated cult identity. I think that's what's happening. And then they're walking around as if that's who they are. And it's not, and it's not very successful. Like the cult identity is a very shallow personality. There's not a lot underneath it, and it's supposed to be invulnerable. So it's a fake personality because people are not invulnerable. We're all gonna die. Even the ones that think we're gonna go to Mars as space robot children, whatever the hell, they're still gonna die. They're still totally gonna die. And that's just like not even a bad thing. That's what's so crazy. It's like hating your own life because you're gonna die is being sold to people like it's a solution. And it's super important for us as individuals who are okay with being ourselves to know that at the core of it, a lot of people that we have an issue with are not the really dangerous ones. It's actually the people that have just adopted this like identity that's a mask, or is like I would say cult identity, and that their original personality is still there and they would respond to positive regard, and it's not our job to make that person come out of that. It's probably better for their family to work on, not us. But that we as individual people are like only as good as the people around us, and we don't have to be around people that are like basically sick. You just really don't, especially if you have like a disability. Like it doesn't make sense as a disabled person to be responsible for somebody who may have their own disabilities but has become fully committed to becoming mentally ill because society says it's normal to be mentally ill in that way, right? And I'm being completely honest. Like I think it's a disease. I think we have psychological diseases, and it's a dissociative disorder. It's they're not in their body, they're not in the real world, they're not interested in how they're actually doing. They're interested in how their mask is doing, and I'm not. Their mask is doing however they say it's doing, and I don't care because that's not real. It's not real. Okay, I think that's a good stopping place. I'm gonna go lie down. And we'll do Stephen Hassan on Wednesday night. And it will be after I find out more about my surgery plan. Hopefully it's pretty streamlined. I think it probably will be because I'm at, again, like the tail end of when they would want to do the surgery, like right at the tail end. So I'm hoping that it'll be without rushing it because I don't want them to overcorrect. I want them to pay attention. I think it'll be pretty straightforward. So I'll have a little bit of digesting of whatever happens there, I assume. And then it will just be getting into avoiding cult programming and conditioning, and get good sleep. Everybody eat good food. That's part of it. They try to mess up your body's rest levels and food levels. Don't undersleep. Whatever you do, don't freaking undersleep. I really think people's freaking out about oversleeping is some bullshit. If you're not feeling like you should be getting up, as somebody that's recovered from surgery before, that shit should make you tired as hell when you're not doing well and your body's trying to recover, and you don't even know what your body's trying to recover from at this point. So just freaking go to sleep. If worst case scenario, just go to sleep. Screw it. Okay. All right. Goodbye, everyone.